Hello, my name is David, and today I am responding to the major claim of overly political correct classroom environments substantially dilute the quality of learning in schools. The advocate's major secondary claims were politically correct classroom environments prevent students from fully expressing their beliefs and ideas. 2, politically correct environments stunt creativity. And 3, correct schools create a false sense of reality. My major claim is that the advocate failed to prove his claim that politically correct classroom environments substantially dilute the quality of learning in schools. So for the advocate's first major claim was that politically correct classroom environments prevent students from fully expressing their belief and ideas. The evidence that the advocate used was that it came from Greg Lukarinoff and the article "The Coddling of the American Mind," stating that in June a professor protected himself with from an essay for Vox describing how gingerly he now has to teach. "I'm a liberal professor and my liberal studies terrify me," the headline said. A number of popular comedians, including Chris Rock, have stopped performing on college campuses. Jerry Seinfeld and Bill Maher have publicly condemned the oversensitivity of college students, saying too many of them can't take a joke. So, in his first secondary claim, it stated that politically correct classroom environments prevent students from fully expressing their beliefs. But in the evidence used, he was talking about a teacher and comedians. So I believe that the argument would have sounded better if he provided evidence about students and how they're not able to express their beliefs or ideas. His second evidence came from the same article, stating that last fall, Omar Mahmoud, a student at the University of Michigan, wrote a satirical column for a conservative student publication, the Michigan Review, poking fun at what he saw as a campus tendency to perceive microaggressions in just about anything. Omar was also employed at the campus newspaper, the Michigan Daily. The Daily's editor said that the way Mahmoud satirically mocked the experiences of fellow Daily contributors and minority communities. Okay, so for this, he was working at the Daily Michigan. This was not in a classroom. He was just writing for a newspaper, and that came from his work and not a classroom environment. The second secondary claim was that politically correct environments stunt creativity. For this, I believe there was a lack of evidence to support the secondary claim. He only used one piece of evidence, coming from about a professor and Jonathan Chait from the article "Not a Very PC Thing to Say," stating that the professor saw that there was an upsurge in her student sensitivity toward even the mildest social or ideological slights. So for this, was the only piece of evidence used, and I feel that wasn't, there was a lack, and more evidence would have better supported the argument. Also, what about the other schools that are not hindered by political correctness? One of my experiences here at Cal Poly Pomona, taking Engineering 100, one day we discussed about various topics such as abortion, gun control, the death penalty, illegal immigration, and that had no effect on our creativity or being able to not discuss those topics. The third major claim provided by the advocate said politically correct schools create a false sense of reality. I believe the advocate failed to demonstrate why politically correct schools create a false sense of reality. The advocate was running out of time in his speech, and he was basically giving circular reasoning. Coming from a piece of evidence of B.J. Gallagher from the problem with clerical correctness of the Huntington Post, saying that if we can't talk about our feelings, fears, aspirations, anxieties, assumptions, hopes, worries, dreams, and concerns, how can we build a trust with those who are different from us? If we can't talk about differences that puzzle us or things on campus, okay. So, with that, once again, there was circular reasoning in that, saying that if we couldn't talk about these topics, then how are we supposed to talk about these topics in the classroom? So I believe that part of our reality comes from the way we grow up, our morals, religions, and social media also plays a big part in perception. From Social Media Effect, Are You Really Who You Portray Online by Kay Green from the Huntington Post says, as we know, perception is everything, especially in the world of social media. So reality is based on our perception of things. And I don't think that being able to talk about these things, about the controversial topics relates to the main claim. And in conclusion, the evidence used in the argument was irrelevant. There was a lack of evidence to support the secondary claims, and the advocate failed to demonstrate why politically correct schools create a false sense of reality. And that is why I feel the advocate failed to prove his claim that politically correct classroom environments substantially dilute the quality in schools.
All right, structurally everything's easy to follow. On the first point, you spend a lot of time summarizing the advocate's argument, including reading the advocate's evidence again and reminding us what it all was in a lot more detail than was probably necessary. I do think you have a valid reasoning argument that suggests that comedians and teachers have difficulty expressing themselves, but it's not students. And the argument then is that the advocate failed to support their own premise by showing that students are affected in some way. Although the second example on this seems to support the advocate's position. Your argument on that is that it can't be used this way because it doesn't fit the generalization. But this is a school newspaper. It's not a regular newspaper. And when you say it's not a classroom, that sounds to me like a classroom environment. So I think you're parsing hairs a little bit on this, and I'm not sure that that answer is very substantial. I like the answer on the first part. On the second part, I think that you are missing the issue here. On the second point, you challenge a lack of evidence because they simply cite the testimony of some scholar on this particular issue, and you don't see it as being particularly significant, and your response is to provide a personal example. So, I mean, in essence, you've got a contrary example. You've got an exception to that situation, but neither of you, either the advocate or yourself, indicate what level of proof we would need in order to make such a generalization. I think the advocate tried to limit it to schools that practice a particular kind of academic experience, and maybe Cal Poly isn't one of those. So again, your generalization or your inductive reasoning here may not be an exception to the argument that the advocate's presenting. That's a little unclear, a little ambiguous. On the third point, you basically say it's circular reasoning. I'm not sure that you've explained why it's circular reasoning. In fact, it sounds a little bit circular, your argument as well. So I think there's a legitimate point to be made here, but it doesn't come across very clearly. On the presentation, you want to work a little bit better at speaking to the audience. The one time that you looked up was when you were talking about your own personal experience, and you seemed a lot more engaged in those circumstances. The rest of the time, there's a lot of reading, and you're just kind of going through the motions, and you want to be, I think, a little more engaged there. All right, thank you.